Karen threw coffee at a guard, confident that tourists could get away with anything, but his unexpected reaction shocked the crowd and changed her life. What happened next was beyond anyone's imagination. The cool London morning lazily drifted along the walls of Buckingham Palace, reflected in the mirror-like shine of 27-year-old Corporal James Holland's polished boots. Tall, fit, and with impeccable posture, he looked as though he had stepped straight out of a textbook on British tradition. His red uniform, adorned with gleaming gold buttons, and his towering bearskin hat symbolized not just the royal guard, but the grandeur of the British monarchy itself. James was the embodiment of resilience, pride, and timeless tradition. Around him buzzed a crowd of tourists. Some filmed videos on their phones, others posed gleefully in front of the motionless guard. The sounds of cameras clicking, children laughing, and occasional shouts created an almost carnival-like atmosphere. Yet amidst the chaos, one group of tourists stood out, as if determined to disrupt the scene. At the center of the commotion was Karen, a woman in her 40s with striking orange hair, oversized sunglasses that seemed to cover half her face, and a brash attitude. She loudly shared her opinions on British traditions with anyone willing to listen. "Look at this, everyone. It's like a circus," she sneered, pointing at James. "Are they even real people or just mannequins?" Her companions, two men in baseball caps, laughing boisterously, egged her on, encouraging her to become the star of her own performance. "Hey, Mr. Guard!" she shouted, drawing the crowd's attention. "Smile! Isn't it your job to entertain us?" The crowd laughed, but not everyone shared her enthusiasm. A few people sighed in disapproval, while others quietly began recording, sensing a spectacle brewing. Karen pushed her way closer to James, crossing the white line meant to separate the public from the guards. James felt his body tense. He knew all too well that many tourists saw him not as a person, but as a prop for their selfies. Yet his duty was to remain still and maintain his dignity. "Come on, move already," Karen jeered, now addressing the phones that were recording her antics. "I wonder, is this real fur? Or is it just another knockoff from China?" She reached out to touch his bearskin hat. James didn't flinch, but inside he felt a storm brewing. This wasn't just disrespect toward him. It was an affront to his uniform, his history, and the nation he represented. Is she really doing this? Anyone watching might have thought. As the crowd's attention began to waver, Karen pulled out a plastic cup with leftover coffee. "Let's see if I can get him to move," she declared with a mocking grin. Before anyone could stop her, Karen hurled the cup at James with the precision of a baseball pitcher. The liquid splashed onto his perfectly polished boots, leaving sticky trails. The crowd fell silent. The laughter stopped. Even her companions looked slightly embarrassed. Karen, realizing all eyes were on her, shrugged and said, "What? It's just a job. He didn't feel anything." James stood still, his face unchanging, but inside he felt a mix of anger and pride for his restraint. The crowd, however, began murmuring. Someone shouted, "Are you out of your mind?" But Karen seemed to revel in the attention, basking in her fleeting moment of infamy. James Holland remained motionless, but his eyes fell on a small girl standing just behind Karen. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old, clutching a toy British flag in her tiny hands as if it could shield her from her loud and brash relative. Her wide eyes glistened with unshed tears, and her lips trembled as though she might cry at any moment. But it wasn't the guard she feared. On the contrary, he was her hero. It was Karen who frightened her. Karen, noticing the shift in attention toward the girl, quickly seized the opportunity to reclaim the spotlight. Leaning down toward the child, she loudly scoffed. "What are you standing there for like a fool? Don't you see? This is fun." The crowd gasped. Some shook their heads in disapproval, and even her companions shuffled awkwardly, unsure where to look. "Maybe we should leave," one of them suggested hesitantly. Karen waved him off dismissively. "No way! I'm a tourist. I paid money to see this show." And then, everything changed. The murmur of the crowd faded, as if the entire plaza had frozen in time. The sound of James's boots broke the silence as he took 2 deliberate steps forward. The sharp clicks echoed, cutting through the tension like a knife. The sunlight caught the polish of his boots, leaving perfect imprints on the asphalt. The crowd held its breath. Karen's smirk faltered as she realized what was happening. James stopped just inches from her, his towering figure casting a shadow over her. His face remained impassive, but his voice, when he spoke, was low, steady, and colder than steel. "Ma'am, I must ask you to leave this area immediately." The crowd gasped in unison. A guard had spoken. Phones flew up to capture the moment. Karen stood frozen, her expression cycling between shock, anger, and defiance. "Who do you think you are to tell me what to do?" she spat, taking a step closer. "You're just a toy soldier." The crowd erupted. "Show some respect," someone shouted. "You're an embarrassment," another added. Karen seemed to have expected the crowd's support, but her plan had backfired. The people turned on her, loudly condemning her behavior. Her companions tried to steer her away, but she only grew louder. "They're just posers! Why are you all defending them? It's their job!" At that moment, the little girl, who had been silent until now, looked up and softly said, "Thank you, sir." James turned his gaze toward the child. For a fleeting second, his stern features softened, revealing the humanity beneath his rigid exterior. Breaking protocol, he knelt down, reaching into his pocket to retrieve a small badge bearing the emblem of the Royal Guard. "This is for you, young lady," he said, handing her the badge. "You understand better than most what respect truly means." The crowd burst into applause. Karen stood dumbfounded, her mouth agape as her moment of glory crumbled. Her companions quietly led her away as the crowd cheered for James. "You deserved that," someone shouted after her. "That's what a real hero looks like." James rose, straightened his uniform, and resumed his position, once again the stoic figure he was at the start of the day. But now, to those watching, he wasn't just a man in a uniform. He was a symbol of honor, resilience, and tradition that would never fade. As for Karen, she left with a feeling that the entire world had turned against her. Was her fleeting moment of fame worth it? Perhaps now she'd have something to think about. Karen walked away, doing her best to appear confident, but her tense shoulders and jerky movements betrayed her true feelings. The crowd behind her buzzed with chatter about what had just happened. Some were gleefully mocking her, while others harshly criticized her behavior. Meanwhile, a tourist's camera stayed fixed on her, capturing every step like a hunter tracking its prey. "This is going viral, just wait," murmured a man in glasses, barely suppressing a grin as he began uploading the footage to social media. And he wasn't wrong. Within hours, Karen had become an internet sensation, but not the kind she'd hoped to be. The video of her throwing a cup of coffee at the guard and shouting arrogant remarks spread like wildfire across platforms. Headlines spoke for themselves. "How not to behave in London, a lesson from Karen." "Tourist tries to humiliate a guard. Outcome? Total embarrassment." A majestic response from British tradition. The comments were merciless. "How can someone be so ignorant? That guard is a model of restraint. I hope she gets a taste of her own humiliation. This is why we can't have nice tourist attractions." Karen tried to defend herself in the comments, but only made things worse. Her social media accounts became magnets for jokes and memes. The most popular showed her holding a plastic cup with the caption, "When you try to act like a queen but end up looking like a clown." Meanwhile, at Buckingham Palace, all was calm. James Holland stood at his post as usual. However, the incident took an unexpected turn. The palace administration, having heard about his actions and seen the public's overwhelmingly positive reaction online, decided to acknowledge his professionalism. At a small ceremony held behind closed doors, his commanding officer presented him with a letter of commendation and praised him for his composure and adherence to protocol. "You've shown that tradition and dignity rise above any provocation, Corporal Holland. Keep up the good work." James gave a simple nod in response, but inside, he felt a deep sense of pride. He understood that this wasn't just about one confrontation. It was a symbol of how tradition and honor could endure in a world that often overlooked their value. The next day, James resumed his post at Buckingham Palace. This time, the atmosphere was different. The crowd behaved more respectfully. Instead of taunts or jeers, James heard quiet murmurs of admiration. "That's the guard from the video." "He's incredible. Such a professional." Some tourists nodded to him in silent acknowledgement as they passed. One man, clearly a local, removed his hat as he walked by and quietly said, "Thank you." The most touching moment came when a small boy, clutching a paper British flag, hesitantly approached the line separating tourists from the guards. Looking up at James's imposing figure, the child nervously extended the flag. Breaking his stillness, James bent slightly and accepted the flag, meeting the boy's gaze for a brief moment. The gesture was subtle, but spoke volumes. The crowd immediately understood. It was a symbol of gratitude and a connection between generations. The crowd erupted in applause. People captured the moment on their phones, but this time with admiration and reverence. James adjusted his bearskin hat, straightened up, and returned to his motionless stance. He knew that traditions were worth protecting, even in a world where many considered them outdated. Perhaps it's moments like these that remind people that honor, discipline, and history are not just abstract concepts. They are values worth upholding, timeless and unchanging.